This is the biggest UFO case that has ever come out of the United Kingdom, ranking as one of the best known reported cases worldwide. It's been compared to the Roswell incident in the United States and often referred to as Britain's Roswell. Except the witnesses in this case aren't your average bystander, but highly respected military personnel. I think this case is absolutely fascinating, so let's get into it. This is the story of the Rendlesham Forest. In late December of 1980, there was a series of sightings of unexplained lights that happened in the Rendlesham Forest near Suffolk, England. These events occurred just outside of RAF Woodbridge, which was used at the time by the United States Air Force. These events happened during the Cold War, and this military base was actually one of the most sensitive bases in the NATO alliance. Airman First Class John Burroughs was guarding the east gate to RAF Woodbridge when he noticed a strange light descending into the trees of the nearby Rendlesham Forest, and thinking that it was a downed aircraft, he alerted the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. Halt then called out Staff Sergeant Jim Penniston and Airman First Class Edward Cabansag to join Burroughs in an investigation of the forest. Penniston then received word from multiple control towers that they were tracking an unknown object over the airbase. So the team exited through the east gate without any weapons because at that point they were outside of United States territory. And what they found was extremely strange. As they approached the tree line, they noticed that there was still something in the forest that was illuminating the tops of the trees. And once they got a little closer, they noticed 3 strange lights in the forest floor, and soon after realized that this wasn't an aircraft crash. At that point, they supposedly felt their bodies fill with some kind of static charge, and walking started to get a lot harder the closer they got, as if they were walking through water. These nervous airmen were then suddenly startled as they heard some screams and cries in the distance that didn't sound too far from their position. After they gathered their composure, they realized that these strange cries were just coming from the nearby farm. The farm's livestock must have gotten spooked from whomever or whatever it was that was lurking in the forest this night. At this point, they started to experience radio malfunctions. So Sergeant Penniston ordered Cabansag to stay back and act as a radio relay as John Burroughs and himself continued on into the forest. Shortly after, they noticed a black triangular craft about 9 feet long and 6.5 feet high that was sitting inside a small clearing inside of the woods.
When we came up on the triangular shaped craft, there were blue and yellow lights swirling around the exterior as though they were part of the surface. The air around us was electrically charged, and we could feel it on our clothes, our skin, and our hair.
One side of the craft had writing on it, in which they described as looking like Egyptian hieroglyphs. Penniston had his notepad with him and actually drew out these glyphs on his notepad.
On one side of the craft, there were symbols that measured 3 inches high, and they're approximately about 2.5 feet long. The feeling I had during the encounter was like no type of aircraft that I've ever seen before. It was in the Jane's book of known aircraft or anything I've seen since. After roughly about 45 minutes, the light from the craft began to intensify. Burroughs and I then took a defensive position away from the craft as it lifted off the ground without any noise or air disturbance. It maneuvered through the trees and shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed.
But before the craft's lights intensified, Penniston later reported that his curiosity got the best of him and he actually touched the glyphs. And let's be honest, I'd do the same. But when he touched the glyphs, that's when the craft's lights intensified, blinding Burroughs and Penniston. During that blinding moment, Penniston says that he got a jolt of low voltage energy and some sort of download of information, some sort of binary code of ones and zeros. The next day, these numbers wouldn't get out of his head, and he could see them so vividly that he decided to write them down. He then hid that notebook in his house and didn't see it again for the next 30 years. They later said, after they were all retired and they were no longer in fear of losing their career, that they were ordered to never speak about the happenings in this forest ever again. After Penniston's retirement, he finally agreed to let a reporter interview him in 2010. And when he brought out the notepad where he had drawn out the glyphs, the reporter noticed the ones and zeros and asked him what that was about. So Jim told him that was the download that I got from the craft. Not knowing anything about binary code, other than it's a digital language, they decided to bring these numbers to a computer programmer, and what they found was extremely strange, because it turns out that there was a message inside of this code. The computer programmer, who was not given the background of this binary code, deciphered this code as several phrases translated to exploration of humanity, continuous for planetary advance, eyes of our eyes, origin year 8100. There was also a list of longitude and latitude coordinates that happened to be the exact match of some of the most sacred and important sites on the planet. It sounds straight out of a B-rated sci-fi movie. I know. And there's still more. There's still more to this crazy story. On December 27th, 1980, which was the next night after the first encounter, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt was at an officer's dinner at RAF Woodbridge when Lieutenant Bruce Anglin came in and told him that the UFO was back. Halt was a total skeptic, and he had no idea what to make of the situation the night prior, so he decided to go back to his quarters to change and join the group in the forest. They entered the forest without weapons once again because they were outside of their jurisdiction, but came prepared with a tape recorder, flashlights, and a Geiger counter, which was a device to measure radiation, and a starlight scope, a night vision device that was developed during the Vietnam War. They made it to the small clearing in the woods where Penniston and Burroughs allegedly saw this craft, and they noticed 3 small indentations that were burned into the ground that formed a triangle. A couple of the surrounding trees were also found with burn marks in the tree trunks, and also had freshly broken branches nearly 15 feet up into the tree.
It is looking directly overhead where you can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of them came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter.
When they analyzed the Geiger counter in this area, they noticed the readings immediately jumped to nearly double of that of accepted background levels.
7. What? Just jumped up to 7/10 there. 7/10 right there in the center? Uh-huh. We found a small blast, what looks like a blasted or scruffed up area here. We're getting very positive readings. Let's see, is that near the center? Yes, it is. This is what we would assume would be the dead center. Just picking up more as you go along closer in here now.
At that point, the group then heard the same frantic cries from the farm animals that Penniston and Burroughs heard the night before, and immediately after noticed a red light that appeared into the trees.
The farmers' barnyard animals, they're very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. Yeah, been a pigmentation. You just saw a light where? Wait, no, slow down. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flashlight there. So there it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out.
The light then started to move towards them and actually started to separate and split into multiple balls of light. They then stated that they started to sway back and forth, and Halt reported them as looking like a blinking red eye. And when they put the starscope onto the lights, they appeared to have a hollow, dark center.
to the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals feel them. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange.
It's strange, but it's about to get even stranger. These lights then moved upwards past the trees and started to move erratically, with some of them hovering over top of the airbase. And shortly after, one of these lights actually started to beam down a light close to the group.
He comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 0330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base.
What? These lights stayed in the area for 3 hours and finally left towards the sea, leaving these servicemen completely confused and terrified. Lieutenant Colonel Halt wrote a memo about the incident to the Ministry of Defense, but was immediately dismissed by both American and British authorities. They condemned the document, but was later made available in the United States under the U.S. Freedom of Information Act in 1983. Halt has since gone on record saying that he believes that he witnessed this paranormal event, which at the time was covered up. Penniston believes that whoever was operating this craft wasn't an alien, but humans from the future with advanced technology, which correlates with his binary code translation of origin year 8100. The Ministry of Defense completed their own investigation after receiving Halt's memo and concluded that the lights that Halt and his team saw on the 27th were actually from the Oxford Nest Lighthouse, located just past the Rendlesham Forest on the coastline. Saying that the light that Halt reported as the blinking red eye was actually just from the rotating light of the lighthouse, and the 3 scorch marks in the shape of a triangle were actually just from burrowing animals. Some others believe that it was just a meteor shower, but everyone involved refuses to accept both of those explanations. So what do you guys think? Do you believe that these servicemen really saw this craft in the forest that night and witnessed this flying object beaming a light down on the ground? Or was it all an elaborate hoax? You guys be the judge and let me know in the comments down below. So thanks for watching, and if you do dig this kind of content, please hit the like button on this video and consider subscribing to this channel for more weekly videos, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.